"The baby will come home with me," my mother-in-law announced at my shower, one hand on the car seat she had bought. "She's too unstable to be a mother." 60 guests turned toward my husband. He stayed silent. I stood, opened the folder they had hidden, and read their plan aloud. My newborn would live with her for 6 weeks while I visited around feeding schedules. Then I held up the final page. Their signatures were there. Mine was blank, but beneath them was a second agreement and the price my husband had accepted behind my back to erase me from our daughter's first weeks. 2 weeks earlier, I was 32 weeks pregnant and drinking electrolyte water at our kitchen table when my daughter kicked beneath my ribs. My name is Elena Cross, my husband, Grant, and I had chosen Lila May for our first child. I worked in clinical research, where a missing signature could stop an entire study. At home, I was still learning that families could ignore consent just as easily. The pregnancy had not been easy. I had been treated twice for dehydration, rushed to the hospital after bleeding at 23 weeks, and started therapy when the fear followed me home. I was not incapable. I was preparing. My obstetrician knew my history. I had booked a postpartum doula, taken newborn classes, and written down exactly what support I would need after delivery. Grant's mother, Maribel, called that proof I would fall apart. At first, her interference looked like excitement. She bought a bassinet, formula, a monitor, and enough clothes for Lila's first 9 months. Every package went to her house. She chose a pediatrician and scheduled an appointment without asking us. She sent a 6-week calendar showing when she would handle feedings and when I should rest. Grant always gave me the same answer: "She's just excited." Then Maribel began calling Lila my second chance. When I asked what she meant, she smiled and changed the subject. After my emergency visit, I had a panic attack in the hospital parking lot. Grant held me until I could breathe and promised he would not tell anyone. 3 days later, Maribel said, "Women who panic before delivery often collapse afterward." That was when I realized Grant had been sending her everything: my blood pressure, appointment dates, sleepless nights, even the days I saw my therapist. He insisted he was keeping his mother informed. I called the postpartum doula for reassurance and learned our reservation had been canceled from the email account Grant and I shared. Grant claimed the agency had no availability. I wanted to believe him. Then Maribel invited us to see the nursery she had prepared. There was a crib, a rocking chair, cameras, bottles, diapers, and a car seat already installed in her garage. Above the crib hung a wooden sign. "Lila's home." "She already has a home," I said. Maribel rested her hand on the crib rail. "She'll have the one she needs." I still thought she was crossing boundaries. I did not yet know my husband had signed a document making that room our daughter's first address. 3 days before the shower, our printer started grinding in the middle of the night. I went downstairs expecting a jammed tax form. Instead, one page slid into the tray. Maternal visits should not interrupt the infant's feeding and sleep routine. I read it twice. Then I opened the drawer beneath the printer and found a cream folder hidden under a stack of envelopes. The first document was titled Cross-Family Postpartum Recovery and Infant Care Plan. 9 pages. Lila would live at Maribel's house for 6 weeks after discharge. Grant would stay there to maintain continuity. I would recover at home or at my townhouse and visit according to a schedule. Visit my own daughter. Maribel was listed as primary postpartum caregiver and household decision coordinator. She and a newborn specialist would control feeding, appointments, and nighttime care. One paragraph said that if I resisted because of anxiety, the family should request a hospital social work consultation before discharge. They had written my objection into the plan as proof I was unstable. At the end were 3 signatures: Maribel's, Grant's, a woman named Colleen Voss. My line was blank. Behind it was a temporary caregiver form with a yellow note in Grant's handwriting: "Bring after delivery when she's calmer." My hands began to shake. Then I found the second document: Cross-Family Stabilization and Repayment Agreement. Maribel had promised Grant $285,000. $35,000 had already been transferred. The remaining $250,000 would be released only after Lila was discharged to Maribel's home and the 6-week plan began. Grant had told me his failed business owed $21,000. The agreement showed a crisis totaling $327,400, merchant advances, credit cards, taxes, a consolidation loan, and $42,000 taken from our maternity fund. One transfer was the $5,600 refund from the postpartum doula Grant claimed had canceled on us. He had canceled her. I kept reading. Grant had promised that up to $180,000 from the sale of my Lakewood townhouse would repay his mother. Beside that clause, he had written, "Get her agreement after delivery. The townhouse was mine." I had bought it before our marriage. I called Colleen. She went silent when I told her I had never approved the plan. Then she forwarded every email Grant and Maribel had sent. Grant had written, "She may resist at first because anxiety makes her see help as control." Another message said, "Once the baby is settled, we can get her signature on the property plan." Colleen withdrew immediately. By dawn, I understood what they had built. They planned to take my place beside Lila, call my resistance an illness, and make me sell my home to pay for disappearing. I did not confront my husband, not until I had changed everything he thought he controlled. I called my sister before sunrise. Amara listened without interrupting while I read the line that turned me into a visitor. When I finished, she said, "He didn't stay out of it. He signed his name." That sentence steadied me. I met Dr. Nisha Raman that afternoon. She reviewed my chart, my treatment plan, and every appointment I had kept. "Seeking help is not evidence that you are incapable," she said. "It is evidence that you are treating a health concern." Then she sent me to Renee Beckett, the patient advocate at Summit Ridge. Together, we changed everything Grant and Maribel assumed they controlled. My hospital record received a privacy password. My name would not appear in the patient directory. Maribel was removed from every release of information, and Grant was removed as my labor support person. Amara became the only person allowed in the delivery room. She also became my healthcare agent if I lost the ability to make medical decisions. Renee placed copies of the care plan, the unsigned caregiver form, and Grant's note in my file. "If anyone brings you documents after delivery," she said, "staff will stop the conversation until you have independent support." I met family attorney Taryn Cho next. She made one thing clear: I could protect my medical care without pretending Grant had no rights as Lila's father. "Parenting arrangements come after birth," she said. "Your labor room, your medical information, and your property are yours to protect now." We notified the broker that Grant had no authority to list my townhouse. I redirected my future paychecks, froze my credit, downloaded every bank statement, and hired a forensic accountant. I did not empty the joint account. I preserved the evidence. Taryn also prepared a temporary separation notice. I signed it, but did not deliver it yet. If I confronted Grant too early, he could warn his mother, hide records, or pressure me before my hospital protections were active. For the first time, silence served me instead of him. Then Amara helped me prepare the townhouse. We changed the locks, cleaned the spare room, moved in a crib, stocked the kitchen, and hired a new postpartum doula through an account Grant could not access. By the end of the week, I had a safe place to recover with Lila. Grant still thought I had nowhere to go. At the shower, Maribel displayed photographs of her nursery beneath the words, "Lila's home." She handed out bags labeled Grandma's first 6 weeks and placed her car seat beside the microphone. Grant sat near her, calm and silent. The cream folder rested on my lap. When Maribel raised her glass and announced that my daughter would come home with her, I stopped waiting for my husband to defend me. I had already changed the plan. Maribel stood beside the screen showing the nursery she had built. The final image was the wooden sign above the crib. "Lila's home." She lifted her glass. "The baby will come home with me," she announced. "Elena needs time to recover. She's too unstable to be a mother right away." The room went silent. 60 people turned toward Grant. He stared at the table and said nothing. I waited long enough for everyone to see his choice. Then I stood. "Since everyone has been told there is a plan," I said, placing the cream folder beside the gifts. "They should know who made it and what it costs." Maribel lowered her glass. "Elena, this is inappropriate. You announced my mental health to 60 people. You made private things public first. I opened the care plan. Lila will live at Maribel's house for 6 weeks after discharge. Grant will stay there. I will recover somewhere else and visit according to a schedule. A woman near the gift table stopped smiling. I read the next line. Maternal visits should not interrupt the infant's feeding and sleep routine. Grant rose halfway. It was only a backup plan. A backup plan does not schedule the mother as a visitor. Maribel stepped toward me. You have had panic attacks. We were preparing for reality. My doctor knows my condition. You do not. I cared for newborns for 30 years. Then you should know, consent does not come from a patient's husband. I turned to the signature page. Maribel signed it. Grant signed it. The newborn specialist signed it. I held up the blank final line. I did not. Grant rubbed his face. Nothing would have happened unless you couldn't cope. Then why did you write that any resistance from me should be treated as anxiety? He looked at his mother. That was answer enough. I opened the second agreement. This explains why my husband stayed silent. His head snapped up. Don't. Your mother promised you $285,000. She already transferred $35,000. The remaining $250,000 is released after Lila is discharged to her house. Someone gasped. Maribel's voice sharpened. That agreement is private. Then why does it require my daughter's discharge address before you release the money? I read the clause beneath it. Grant also promised that up to $180,000 from the sale of my townhouse would repay his mother. We discussed selling it, he said. You were going to ask. You decided to promise it instead. Then I told the room the rest. The business debt was not $21,000. It was $327,400. $42,000 had vanished from our maternity fund. Grant had canceled the postpartum doula I hired and used the $5,600 refund to pay creditors. You didn't stay silent because you were afraid of your mother, I said. You stayed silent because she was paying you. Maribel pointed at me. This is the instability I warned everyone about. No, this is documentation. I closed the folder. And I changed the plan before coming here. Grant went still. Amara is now my only labor support person. My hospital file has a privacy password. Maribel has no access to my room, schedule, or medical information. The hospital already has these documents and the unsigned caregiver form. Maribel's face drained. You cannot keep me from my granddaughter. I can decide who enters my hospital room. I looked at Grant. You are no longer my medical proxy. You cannot sign for me. List my townhouse. Or bring your mother into my care. You changed everything without telling me. You signed away my place in our daughter's first 6 weeks without telling me. Are you keeping Lila from me? No, your relationship with her will be handled properly after she is born, but my medical care, my home, and my recovery are no longer subjects your mother can negotiate. I removed the separation notice from the folder. Grant and I are separating. Maribel gripped the car seat handle. You are proving you cannot think clearly. Help stands beside a mother. It does not schedule her visits. I placed both agreements on the table. You planned my recovery as if I were disappearing. Then you planned to sell my home to pay for it. I changed the plan so neither of you could replace me. Amara came to my side. And we left. 3 weeks later. Maribel carried that same car seat into the hospital, along with the papers she still believed I would sign. At 38 weeks, my blood pressure rose high enough for Dr. Rahman to schedule an induction. Amara drove me to Summit Ridge before sunrise. Renee met us at registration and checked the privacy password, visitor list, advance directive, and the note warning staff that I might be pressured to sign documents after delivery. For the first time in months, everyone around me asked before making a decision. Maribel did not. She arrived in the lobby carrying a suitcase, the car seat from the shower, and the cream folder. I'm the primary postpartum caregiver, she told the desk nurse. The nurse checked my file. That title does not give you access to the patient or authority over discharge. Maribel called former co-workers. None gave her my room number. Grant arrived an hour later and asked to enter labor and delivery. I said no. He was Lila's father. But I was the patient. I would not spend labor wondering whether he was sending updates to the woman waiting downstairs to take my child home. The induction lasted 14 hours. I shook. I cried. I needed Amara to hold one hand while a nurse held the other. None of that made me incapable. Just after midnight, Lila Mae Cross was placed against my chest. She was warm, furious, and perfect. The next afternoon, I allowed Grant one short visit without his mother. He looked at Lila for a long time. Then he placed the cream folder beside my water. "The lenders gave me 48 hours," he said. "Mom can transfer the remaining $250,000 today." I looked at the folder. "What does she want? You already know. Sign the caregiver authorization. Let Lila stay with her for a few weeks. We can list the townhouse later, even after everything." He called it letting. "Mom can erase the debt," he said. "Not with my home and not with my daughter." His face tightened. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Face the debt without making our child the payment." Renee entered and saw the papers. "Do you want Mr. Cross to remain?" Nora Grant looked at Lila once more, then carried the unsigned folder out. On discharge morning, a social worker confirmed I had safe housing, medical follow-up, a postpartum doula, and family support. Amara brought the car seat I had chosen. Maribel's stayed in her vehicle. Lila left the hospital with me. The final payment was never transferred. Maribel's empty nursery remained ready for 6 weeks that never belonged to her. She told relatives I had suffered a breakdown. I sent one message. "Lila and I are healthy. Our medical team approved our discharge plan. No one else was authorized to decide where she would live." Grant moved into a short-term apartment. A forensic accountant traced the missing maternity money and hidden debts. He began discussing settlement and bankruptcy with counsel. His visits with Lila were arranged in writing, and Maribel could not turn them into her own access. I did not recover the $42,000 overnight. I was exhausted. I cried during feedings. I continued therapy and needed Amara and the doula more than expected. Needing help never made Maribel right. 3 months later, she mailed a blanket-embroidered grandma's girl. I returned it. The next one said only Lila. I placed it in the closet, unopened. They had called me unstable. But when money, fear, and betrayal filled the room, I was the only one steady enough to refuse the deal they had signed with my daughter's life. Near dawn, Lila slept against my chest while Amara dozed on the sofa. Her birth announcement, my hospital bracelet, and Grant's written visitation schedule rested on the table. Not one page had been written by his mother. I finally understood that stability does not mean needing no one. It means choosing who is allowed to help without taking your place. Money cannot buy parental authority. And a child should never become payment for an adult's debt. If someone ever used help to control you, share your story below. Subscribe for more stories where quiet boundaries become the strongest answer.